Hello, welcome to Walking Together Through Lent, a program of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service on these 5 Lenten Tuesdays when we talk about themes related to life and Lent and have some in-depth discussion with some wonderful guests. My name is Eric Shafer. I am now the pastor in residence for Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. And my guest today is my friend, and I'm losing my papers here already. Yes, my friend whose name I forget. No, I didn't do that. Rozella Haydee White, who is a coach, life coach, public theologian, and speaker, and has been with me on past interviews. And today we're going to talk about the theme of grief and loss. Hello, Rozella. Good to see you again.
Hi, Eric. I'm so excited to be here and to be in conversation with you.
So, Rozella, Lent is one of those seasons, and you're a trained theologian, graduate of United Lutheran Seminary in the ELCA, and grief and loss is a Lenten theme, but it's really a theme for life. And boy, with the past 3 years, it's certainly been a theme of most everyone's lives.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I always used to say, I don't know if I was a glutton for punishment, but Lent has always been my favorite liturgical season. And grief and loss are both things that I have and continue to navigate regularly. It's almost as if I've become very comfortable with grief. And Lent invites us to a time of getting comfortable with the idea of loss, of our fallibility, of our mortality. And so much of that has been persistent, right? Especially over the last 3 years. But if we actually give ourselves the space to really reflect, for many of us, the last 3 years hasn't been our first experience of grief. It's just been maybe the most pronounced. And when you take the grief that we've experienced, the loss, with the slowing down and just stopping of life, I think that's when it became something that everybody was facing in the same way for the first time together.
It became public rather than private, didn't it, in that sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it became clear that we have not been dealing with our grief, right? We have not been embodying the rituals, the practices of lamentation, of recognizing the loss that we've experienced, of ritualizing and making space for conversations that are hard, of really being in touch with death, right? Grief is a product of loss writ large. It's not just about death of a person. It's about death of an idea, about death of an identity, about death of relationships, about death of people, and death of hope. I mean, that's what grief is. And that's what, honestly, this journey in Lent and walking towards the cross is about, the death of hope.
Yes, yes. And so for you, who likes Lent, and I do too, I think that Lent gives us a chance as a church to focus on the important things again. But how do we get through Lent this year, especially in 2023? Do you have any tips, so to speak, as a coach for those folks that are watching today?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is connecting to what you just said, the phrase you said, get through. Right. And I think one of the shifts that I've made in my own life is less about getting through and more about embracing in the midst of, right? Because when we think about getting through, we're thinking immediately about the other side. What am I doing every day just to get to the other side? And I think one of the beautiful things that grief and that these times of deep reflection can invite us to is a slowing down, is a stopping, and is an embracing. And now I always want to give a caveat, right? I'm someone, and I've talked about this publicly, who lives with chronic mental illness, major depressive disorder. And so there is a difference between the grief of our day-to-day life, the slowing down, the embracing, when we are in a well state, if you will. Right? When we are unwell, and there have been seasons when I am unwell, where I am deeply in the midst of a depressive episode, what I'm saying now does not necessarily apply in the same way. Right. So part of it is being clear about where you are emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically, because that gives you clues as to what you're able to do and embrace and be. So if you are literally fighting for your life, right, it's not about having the luxury to embrace and to reflect and to slow down. No, you do what you need to do to survive, whether that's medication, whether that's ongoing support, hospitalization, whatever that is. For those of us, though, who may not be in that space, but are in the very human and real space of life is hard, suffering is pervasive. It feels like the sky is falling every day, right? I think about, is it Chicken Little? The sky is falling, the sky is falling. It feels like every day something is happening. For those of us who have the capacity to stop and to slow down, I think the first invitation is to embrace the moment, that it's not about pushing through, pushing past, rushing through, getting through. It's about being very aware of what this moment is inviting you to. And I think in that awareness, there's also an invitation to get back in our bodies. I talk a lot about the body. I talk a lot about embodiment. And if I'm honest, it's because of my faith, and it's because of the faith that formed me, the Christian faith, that is an embodied faith. It's an embodied religion. We believe in a God that chose to be in human flesh, to be incarnate, and to dwell among us. And so I think that we have to stop and slow down enough to see what our bodies are telling us. And here's the thing: grief makes itself known in our bodies. It makes itself known in our breath. It makes itself known in where we hold tension, the clenching of the jaw, the rising of the shoulders, the lower back, right? It makes itself known in our heart rate and how it is that our blood pressure moves. And I think when we don't pay attention and we're not slowing down, then a lot of warning signs wherever our body is trying to tell us, hey, this is happening, I need you to pay attention, go unnoticed. They go missed. So to slow down, to remember that it's about embracing the moment, to get really aware of your body. And then I invite people to always practice compassion for yourself, for others. Grief has revealed a lot to me about myself and about the people that I love most. And first and foremost, it has invited me to be more compassionate, to be more curious, to actually create space. Because I say that if we don't actually create the space to deal with grief, grief will deal with us, whether it's through physical things that come out, or it's through our emotional and mental overwhelm, burnout. All of those things will make itself known if we don't create the space. So those are just some initial tips when I think about how it is we navigate grief, especially in this season.
Well, as you were talking, I couldn't help but think that probably Lent then is the season of body more than any of the church seasons, especially when you think of the abuse and torture of Jesus's body, literally a season of the body, and one that then, as you suggested, gives us the chance to reflect about both our own bodies and then embodiment into the culture, if you will.
Yeah, because it's never just about us. Right. I think if we're only focused on us, whatever it is that we're doing, we're probably not doing it in the way that it was intended. And so it's about getting in our bodies, because when we're more connected with ourselves, I deeply believe that we're better able to connect with others. And that connection is both physical in terms of relationality, physical relationality, but it's also mental and emotional and spiritual. Right. I think, and this is where for me, when I think about the work of LIRS, I think about refugees and those who are migrating and immigrating. It's easy to be disconnected from another person, from a people's story, from a people's struggle, when I am disconnected from myself. When I am in touch with myself, and when that in touchness leads me outside of myself, I am better able to hold, to embrace, and to be curious about the story and the personhood of another. And so in my work as a coach, especially in this season of my life, a fundamental principle that I coach around is around connection, around the fact that we're disconnected from our beings, from our ideas, from our beliefs, from our power. And that disconnection leads to profound disconnection from each other. And ultimately, I think that our Christian faith is about connection. But Eric, I love how you talked about how Lent being a season of the body, because it is a season of slowing down. It is a season of wandering, if you will, in a wilderness space. It is a season of being dependent on something other than yourself. And so it's the season that's constantly inviting us back into self and out towards others, back into self and back towards others. But it begins with slowing down.
Yeah. And now I'm struck with the contrast, and we could probably talk too long on this, but I'm struck with the contrast then of some of the people we're watching today. Perhaps a number of them are leaders in our congregations, whether they be a leader in a Lutheran congregation or others, some of the clergy, some of the deacons, some of the lay leaders. For them, Lent is not a season of slowing down. It's a season of harder work. And I know that it's easy to get discouraged, especially in the church today. And I wonder what you would say to that pastor, older or younger, who is kind of going, oh no, I got to get through the next 45 days just to get through this.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things that comes up is saying from addiction recovery, right? I'm the child of an addict and have been on a journey of recovery in my own way of being in terms of relational recovery. So codependency has been my addiction. And one of the things that always comes up in the rooms that we talk about is just for today, right? Just for today. What am I being invited to be? Who am I being invited to be? What am I being invited to do? How am I being invited to show up for myself and for the people in my life, right? So that refrain for me has been an important refrain. The other thing, and this is something that, I coach clergy, I coach ministry leaders, and in my years of leaving traditional ministry in some way, shape, or form, it's been about 6 years, I've begun to recognize that there are things that we believe to be true that just aren't true. So even this conversation around like Lent, or, we used to talk about Advent into Christmas, Lent into Easter. These are like the Super Bowls of the church season. Like we are on it, we're going, it's our time. Like there is this hustle and bustle. And I guess I'm wondering, but why? Right. And it's not that I'm saying that there isn't, these are like our high holy days, high holy seasons. And to me, that actually coincides with slowing down, with being more present, with being more aware. And actually that ordinary time, the times in between are the days to me that we rev up in order to slow down and be more present in those high holy moments and seasons. And so, this is not a coaching call. If I was on a coaching call, I would ask the question of, when we think about the work that's before us, who says that this has to be the busiest go time of the year, especially when it's a sacred invitation and call for us to model as leaders what attending to self and spirit and community and possibility actually looks like. I have really divested from this urgency that is pervasive. And it's interesting because the more that I worked outside of faith-based spaces, the more that I find that it's endemic to faith-based spaces, more so than other places and communities. And I'm really curious about that, about what are the expectations, what are the standards, what are the ways of being that are actually maladaptive that many of us bought into and have bought into as we're leading congregations and ministry sites.
Yeah, and often a setup for disappointment, because we cannot be this whatever we've laid on ourselves for this season or any season in the church here. That's so true. We're getting to the end of our quick time here. Rozella, if people want to know more about your work and ministry, how can they find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is my name, rozellahwhite.com. And across social media platforms, I am Love Big Coach. So whatever platform you're on, you can find me at Love Big Coach, all one word. And I really just want to invite people, especially any leaders that are listening, to be attentive to your thoughts, to your feelings, to your heart, to your body, especially this season of Lent, right? It's in some respects for many we're entering kind of a round of first since the height of the pandemic, right? We're kind of getting back or getting to whatever word we want to say, life in this new season. And I really invite leaders to consider, what is the story that keeps you from accessing the holistic reality of who you are, and that holistic reality being the body, the mind, the heart, the soul? What are the stories that keep you from accessing that? What are the stories that you're believing that you have to continue to push through rather than pause? Where does the urgency come from? And also, how are we engaging? How are you engaging the grief and the loss that you have absolutely experienced over these last 3 years? You know, the loss of identity as a pastor, in terms of a pastor or a clergy person does things this way, or a congregation shows up this way, and the reality that that has significantly changed. And with significant change comes grief. So my invitation to folks is to, if you're not processing with someone, to reach out, to find support, to get connected, whether that's coaching, whether that's spiritual direction, whether that's therapy, because in order for us to lead well communities, we have to be well. And we cannot be well if we are not attending to our holistic selves.
Thank you, Rozella. That's wonderful. Thank you. This has been Walking Together Through Lent, a presentation of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, LIRS.org. And today our guest has been Rozella Haydee White, who is a life coach, public theologian, and just an all-around good person. I like public theologian best, I have to say, Rozella. That's one of my favorites. She is an author. You can see in the back of her image, her book, Think Big. Love Big. Excuse me, Love Big. And you can find that on Amazon if you're looking for that. And she also told you how to reach her. We will be together each Tuesday during Lent for 5 Tuesdays, live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. But if you sign up, you'll also get a link to look at our interview anytime. Our guest next week will be Carlos Pena, the former vice president of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. But today we're just grateful for you, Rozella. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.